Throughout the summer of 1984, Tokuro Fujiwara's team had been working on developing and fleshing out a new arcade title for Capcom. This project deviated heavily from the shooter genre, which the company's two previous games had fallen into, and would play much closer to quote-unquote maze games like Pac-Man and Bomberman. The differing genre wasn't the only big change though. Fujiwara's team decided to go with a much different motif than Vulgus, their previous arcade sci-fi STG, opting for a pirate-themed setting complete with large ship decks and ruthless buccaneers. The project eventually received the title Pirate Ship Higemaru, or often simply just Higemaru. In Japanese, hige means beard and maru means round or circle, with the game's title roughly translating to Pirate Ship Beard Round. In Higemaru, players would take control of the sailor Momotaru, who would confront the titular Higemaru pirate army that was terrorizing the high seas, led by their captain, Baines. The game took place across several stages, referred to as decks in-game, that had barrels arranged around them which formed mazes. The Higemaru pirates would roam around each deck's maze, attempting to trap and defeat the player, with Baines regularly appearing and scouring the levels as well. Momotaru by himself was completely defenseless, but when he approached the barrels that formed each stage's maze, he could pick them up and fling them at oncoming enemies to defeat them. This not only let Momotaru deal with oncoming threats, but also allowed him to alter the layout of a stage at will. Each deck had a certain number of Higemaru pirates the player needed to defeat before being allowed to proceed to the next level. As the game progressed, the pirates would get faster and more aggressive, making things much more difficult in later stages. The pirates often even climbed into barrels and would roam the stage aggressively pursuing the player. Hitting them in this state knocked them out of the barrel and stunned them briefly, giving the player a few seconds to hit them again and finish the job. Thankfully, Momotaru was able to even the playing field a bit by collecting special items uncovered in barrels that acted much like a power pellet in Pac-Man, making him completely invincible and able to defeat a pirate simply by running into them. As had become a standard occurrence now, Capcom's signature Yashichi made its third appearance, showing up as an item that awarded points to the player if they picked it up. As the project proceeded, Fujiwara was exceptionally happy with how the game's 16x16 sprite graphics had turned out, being impressed by just how much personality each character could display. Higemaru completed its summer development and released in Japanese arcades in September of 1984. It's unclear if the game found much success for Capcom due to it never showing up in Japan Arcade Magazine Game Machine's Top 25 list, despite it receiving multiple advertisements in the publication and both Vulgus and Sun making the cut. Higemaru was never brought to the West and remained exclusive to Japanese arcades, yet another piece of evidence that brought into question the title's financial success. While Capcom's third arcade game had many enjoyable and unique traits that made for a fun experience, it also suffered from somewhat sluggish controls at times, especially when trying to position Momotaru properly in front of barrels or quickly turning a corner when pursued by enemies, which kept the game from being truly memorable. Higemaru remained a Japanese exclusive title for a decade and a half. It was re-released as a part of Japan's Capcom Generations 3 collection in 1998, and finally made its way outside of its native country to Europe the following year in 1999, being included in the PlayStation PAL exclusive multi-disc Capcom Generations compilation. Higemaru eventually made its debut in North America 6 years later, 2 entire decades after its original release, as part of the Capcom Classics collection, and would continue to appear in Capcom compilations in the subsequent years. A sequel to the arcade game titled Higemaru Makaijima Nanatsu no Shima Daibouken was released in 1987 for both the Famicom and MSX2 hardware. Makaijima's gameplay was very similar to its predecessor, but now featured a large focus on exploration. Momotaru could sail his ship around an expansive world filled with multiple islands to traverse and treasures to uncover. While this sequel apparently had been planned to be localized for Western territories by Capcom as Makai Island, those plans were unfortunately cancelled, and Higemaru Makaijima remains exclusive to Japan even today. As has been the case with many Capcom titles, Momotaru and the Higemaru pirates have made cameo appearances in some of the company's later games, including Strider, where the third boss is a pirate named Higemaru Jr., Namco Cross Capcom, where Sylphie throws barrels in one of her attacks, just like Momotaru, Zack and Wiki as mysterious treasures, and Resident Evil 4's 2023 remake, where Momotaru, Bose, and the Higemaru pirates all show up as target dummies in the shooting range. At one point, Momotaru was even supposed to be a playable character in Street Fighter V, but was eventually scrapped for someone else. Though the Higemaru characters do have artwork and information on the online Street Fighter V character guide website. Pirate Ship Higemaru helped show that Capcom could capably make games that weren't all shooters, but after releasing the title in fall of 1984 to what seems like very little fanfare and financial success, the company would pivot back to its STG roots and broaden its focus outside of Japan to the Western gaming market for its first major arcade hit.